The most effective path to widespread, lasting change isn't about high effort on a dozen different fronts. It's about finding that one single strategic behavior that just generates this massive chain reaction across your entire life. We're going to show you how to leverage this one habit to completely overhaul your life without burning out.
So this idea right here, this is the core of our entire explainer. It's a complete shift in how we think about self-improvement. It's not about piling more and more onto your plate. No, it's about finding that one pressure point that makes everything else easier. Success, ironically, requires finding the one thing you can do that lets you try less everywhere else. So how do we actually get there? Well, here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to unpack the effort paradox to see why just trying harder doesn't work. Then we'll dive into that all too familiar cycle of burnout. From there, we'll introduce the solution, the Keystone system, and the science that makes it tick. And finally, we'll get super practical, help you find your very first keystone, and really redefine what transformation is all about. All right, let's dive right in by challenging a myth that pretty much all of us have been taught to live by, the effort paradox. It's this deep-seated belief that more effort always equals more success. But, as we're about to find out, when it comes to change that actually sticks, that strategy is, well, it's just plain flawed. Okay, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? Two totally different ways of thinking about change. Over on the left, you've got the common approach. This is the one that feels so intuitive, right? You try to change everything all at once. Your diet, your gym routine, your budget, your schedule. It's this all-out war that depends on your willpower, which we know is finite, and it almost always ends in burnout. Now look at the right. This is the Keystone approach. This isn't about brute force, it's about being smart. It's about strategic leverage. Find one domino, and the rest will fall. It's about working smarter, not just harder. And that common approach, it leads us directly into our next section, the cycle of burnout. You see, to beat an enemy, you've got to know its name. So let's really dissect the emotional and the psychological reasons why that all-out strategy almost never, ever works. Ah, yes, this is the classic New Year's resolution in a nutshell. January 1st hits, you feel like you're on top of the world. You're juggling a new diet, a new fitness plan, a whole new budget. And for a week, maybe two, you feel absolutely unstoppable. But then, well, life happens. A stressful day at work, one missed workout, and the whole thing just crumbles. The key here is to realize this isn't a personal failing. It's a strategic one. It's a frustrating and, for so many of us, a seemingly inevitable cycle. So what's actually going on inside our brains during this whole cycle? Well, the scientific term for it is ego depletion. I want you to think of your willpower not as some kind of character trait, but more like the battery on your phone. Every single decision you make, what to eat, whether to go to the gym, resisting that online purchase, it drains a little bit of that battery. And when you try to change everything at once, you drain that battery down to zero fast. It's a resource management problem, not a character flaw. And all of this leads to a phenomenon that I think most of us know all too well, the mid-February crash. It's the totally predictable outcome of ego depletion. Your willpower battery is just completely drained from juggling a dozen new rules, and your exhausted brain does what it's designed to do. It defaults to its old programming. It's not that you're weak. It's that the strategy itself was designed for failure from the start. And there's another layer to this, and it's called cognitive load. Your prefrontal cortex, or your PFC, think of it as the CEO of your brain. It handles all the big decisions and self-control. But here's the thing, it has limited bandwidth. When you try to install 5 new habits, you're basically flooding the CEO's inbox with urgent memos. And when the PFC gets overwhelmed, it just offloads tasks to the part of your brain that runs on autopilot. Your brain is literally designed to retreat to what's easy when it's overloaded. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now, let's finally talk about the solution. This brings us to the Keystone system. This is where we pivot from a framework of failure to a framework for success. We're about to see how one single strategic change can trigger this powerful cascade that literally rewires your brain for success. This is it. This is the map, the entire system in one visual. Think of this as a structural shift, one change that alters your entire decision-making framework. It all starts with selecting a single, high-leverage keystone habit. From there, you achieve a daily small win. That consistent success, that's what triggers a fundamental identity shift. You start to see yourself differently. And that new identity, is what makes other positive behaviors happen almost automatically without you even having to try. But what's the engine driving this whole cascade? It all comes down to the small win. Every single time you complete your Keystone habit, no matter how small it is, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine. Now, this isn't just about feeling good. It's a powerful neurological signal. It's telling your brain, hey, do that again. But even more importantly, it reinforces a new belief. I am the kind of person who follows through. But how do you guarantee that small win every single day, especially on those days when you have zero motivation? This is where the concept of the minimum viable action, or MVA, becomes your secret weapon. The MVA is the smallest, most laughably easy version of your habit that you can do without fail. I'm talking one push-up, writing one sentence, meditating for 60 seconds. The goal isn't the big workout. The goal is the win. The goal is to get that dopamine hit and maintain the streak so you never drain your willpower battery. So we've seen the system, but now let's get into the science of why it's so incredibly powerful. This isn't just some clever life hack. This is a system that's designed to work with your brain's natural wiring, not against it. At the psychological core of this system is something called self-efficacy theory. Now, that's a fancy term for a really simple idea. It's your belief in your own ability to succeed. Every time you complete your MVA, you're giving your brain concrete, undeniable proof that you are capable. This repeated evidence is what builds that belief. That small win isn't just a little mood booster. It's the psychological fuel that makes you believe you can take on bigger and bigger challenges. And this is where you can see the neurological genius of the system. When you practice a Keystone habit consistently, your brain automates it. It literally moves the habit from the conscious, energy-hungry prefrontal cortex to the automatic, super efficient basal ganglia. This frees up your brain's CEL. All that mental energy you used to spend debating should I or shouldn't I is now saved. And that saved energy can then be used for other positive choices, like eating healthier or finally tackling your finances. You automate one success to free up mental space for the next one. All right, we've covered the theory, we've covered the science. Now let's make this real for you. This section is all about application. We're shifting from the what to the how. This is your actionable guide to putting the Keystone system to work in your own life, starting today. So the big question is, where do you start? How do you find your own personal leverage point? It can definitely feel a bit overwhelming, but I promise you there's a simple, effective process to figure it out. Here it is, your 3-step implementation plan. Step 1, select your leverage point, the habit that gives you the most immediate positive feedback. Step 2, define its minimum viable action, making it basically impossible to fail. And step 3, once that habit is automatic, you consciously link other behaviors to it, leveraging all that momentum you've built up. So what actually makes for a good Keystone habit? The key is choosing something that provides immediate feedback and a reliable small win. Daily exercise is a classic example. You get an instant mood boost. Meal planning gives you an immediate sense of control over your health. A solid morning routine gives you immediate command over your day. See the theme here? Immediate feedback. That's what fuels the dopamine loop and builds that all-important belief in yourself. Okay, this slide is so important because it shows the mental reframe in action. The old way is to set a huge, intimidating goal. Run 5 miles. Just the thought of that is exhausting. The Keystone approach, using the MVA, reframes the goal completely. Your goal is not to run 5 miles. Your goal is to put on your running shoes. That's it. That's the win. And you know what happens once the shoes are on? Well, a lot of the time, you'll end up going for a walk or maybe even a run. You focus on the ridiculously small action that starts the process, not the intimidating outcome that stops you before you even begin. We're getting close to the end here, so let's pull back and look at the big picture. This final section is all about the source of transformation. It's where we take everything we've learned to completely redefine what self-control and personal change really are. If you take only one thing away from our time together, please let it be this. True transformation doesn't come from 1,000 tiny acts of willpower. It comes from designing a single anchor habit that fundamentally shifts your identity. Because once you start to truly believe I am a person who exercises, or I am a person who writes, a whole cascade of other positive behaviors doesn't just become easier, it becomes inevitable. It just becomes who you are. And that leaves us with this one last crucial reframe. We've been taught to think that self-control is about adding more rules and fighting more impulses. The Keystone principle completely flips that on its head. The goal is not to add more habits to your life. The goal is to find the one strategic habit that makes most of the others unnecessary. So the only question left to ask is, what's your leverage point?